I want to do a blog post called Blame It on Rio, because pretty much everything in my life is because of Rio. So the phone rang at 4:45 and it was the headhunter and he said, "You got it." I said, "I got what?" He said, "Everything you asked for." I said, "That's impossible." He said, "That's what I thought." So when can you start? I could do this every day for the rest of my life and there would still be a lot left to learn. And now, 46 years later, I know that that's absolutely right.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to For the Love of Jewelers. I'm your host, Mark Nelson, and today I have a really special guest. She doesn't think she's that special, but she is that special. I have Kate Wolf with me here today, and she and I have kind of a long history, which is fantastic. And Kate's been carving wax and making jewelry for about 46 years and teaching for another 35. And the entire time, she's been developing new tools, and like her wolf wax and her wax carving tools and a bunch of other stuff. And my favorite thing from Kate, my favorite quote is, "Every tool is a good beginning." Is that right, Kate?
Yes. Blame your tools. If you're having a problem, maybe it isn't you. Maybe your tools are the problem.
And it's always a good beginning, right?
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Kate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, it's so great to see you again.
I'm a huge fan of the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's been a while since we've seen you here in town, but you used to come out all the time to teach, and those are really great moments for me. And I'd like kind of get it started to introduce yourself, what's your kind of history, how'd you get started in jewelry making, and kind of what led you down this path a little bit.
Cool. Well, I went to Tyler School of Art. I had been a potter's apprentice all through high school, and I went to Tyler to study with the famous guy, Rudy Staffel. And before I had a chance to take a class with him, they retired him. And I was heartbroken. And the new teacher was from Montana, and he was really laid back. And I was afraid it wasn't going to be a good fit. So I knew they had a really well-equipped metal studio.
Oh, okay.
And first day of metals class, I fell in love with it. And I remember thinking, I could do this every day for the rest of my life and there would still be a lot left to learn. And now, 46 years later, I know that that's absolutely right. There's never going to be an end to the different areas you can explore in this industry. And I'm still just as excited about it. I was a metals and jewelry major through art school. Mostly I just learned that I loved it. But when I got out, I knew that there was a lot left for me to learn before I tried to go out on my own and make my own living, making my own stuff. So I got a job in the jewelry district in Philadelphia, Sampson Street, in a sweatshop with 5 wild and crazy Armenian brothers who were from Beirut. And they grew up in a refugee camp. And they were really good at making everything in the studio work with duct tape and baling wire.
Right.
And we did a high volume of work. There were 6 of us in the shop, and they would hand me something and say, "Lun Kurik," which is, "Hey, sister, I need you to learn this really fast because I need 50 of these by 2 o'clock. So it was a really wonderful way for me to learn a lot of stuff fast. And everything they knew, they wanted me to learn as fast as I could. So I was there for 6 years.
6 years.
And I started doing some side work, carving for other people because I wasn't making much money there. And one of the companies I carved for was the Franklin Mint. They had a jewelry division. And I carved 5 or 6 master models. So what that is, if you carve a piece of wax and cast it and finish it, that's a one-of-a-kind piece. Right. But if you're going to carve something or fabricate it and then take molds off of it and do a production run off of it, that's called a master model. So I did about 4 master models for the Franklin Mint, and they asked me to come in and interview. And I walked in there, and there were 4,000 people working there. There's closed circuit cameras everywhere. Yeah. And I couldn't get out of the building fast enough. It was just the opposite of where I was working. Where I worked on Friday afternoons, we would take the company petty cash money and get a couple 6-packs of beer and clean up the shop and then play poker. And it was like a totally different vibe. So the next day, the headhunter called me up and offered me the job. And I said, "Thank you, but I'm not interested." And he had been a jeweler in the jewelry district before, so I knew him before. That's how I got the freelance work from them. And he said, "Well, I have to take you out for lunch, anywhere you want to go." So, of course, I picked Bon Appetit, which was $100 for 2 people for lunch. And this was in 1987, so that gives you an idea. I mean, it's expensive now, but back then, my goodness. So he came and took me out to lunch 4 times. And every time I said, Lou, I'm not going to take the job. I'm not interested. And the job had been in the paper for $25,000 a year, which was almost double what I was making with the Wild and Crazy Armenians at Castleview Jewelers. So finally, I was using this gold oxidizing solution that was hydrochloric acid mixed with something. It was bad. And we had an exhaust fan that was really good. But what I didn't realize is if you have all the windows and doors closed, you're not exhausting any fumes. You're creating a vacuum. So I got overcome by fumes, and I went outside, and my boss came out and he said, what was that stuff? I feel whacked. And I told him, and he said, I feel whacked too. He said, do you want to go get a beer? Which I don't recommend, by the way, if you've just poisoned yourself. So we went and had a quick beer and came back, and the phone was ringing, and it was the headhunter from the Franklin Mint. And he said, Linda Resnick, who's the owner of the company, said, I have to hire you or I'm going to lose my job. So what would it take to get you to take this job? I need to be really clear. I was not good enough for the job. I had never done anything that was done in mass production. And every mistake I made would be multiplied by the size of the production run. And they were doing huge production runs. So it wasn't just that I didn't like the environment, but I also knew that I was not qualified. But I had just had a fast beer after being overwhelmed by fumes. So I started rattling off the most insane list of demands, thinking, well, that'll put the end of this. They'll leave me alone now. So I told them I wanted $40,000 a year to start, with 6 months severance pay if they fire me, with an extra month for every year I'm there. And I was planning on getting fired, with a week to go to take a workshop somewhere in the continental U.S., all expenses paid every year, medical insurance to start immediately, 3 weeks vacation starting immediately with an extra week for every year I'm there, and then a trip to New York once a month to go gallery and museum hopping on the company dime. And I said, and now this is the expensive part. Any tool I want, no questions asked, and there will never be enough tools for me. And he gasped. He's like, there's no way I could get you all that. You'd have a much better deal than your boss. And I said, can you let me know by 5? I got to go. And I hung up. And my bosses were literally laying on the floor, kicking their hands and feet up and laughing. So the phone rang at 4:45, and it was the headhunter. And he said, you got it. I said, I got what? He said, everything you asked for. I said, that's impossible. And he said, that's what I thought. So when can you start? And I was like, my bosses said, are you crazy? We're not going anywhere. If you don't like it, you can come back. So I reluctantly said, well, I guess I'll start in 3 weeks. And it was more than double my salary with really good perks. So I got there, and I knew immediately I was in over my head. So we were doing, when I first started there, we were doing $54 million a year in jewelry sales. It was a big business. We were one of the world's top 6 advertisers, right up there with Pepsi.
And this is for the Franklin Mint, right?
Yes, the Franklin Mint. And it was huge business. So they would hand me something, and I was so out of my league. And I would think, well, I'm going to make mistakes, so I should start out with a big piece of wax. But now I know you're better off starting with it as close to the right size as possible. So you're just trimming out your pattern and rounding corners. But I started with so much material that it looked like a wad of bubble gum, which was not the look I was going for. And I would spend 3/4 of the project in total panic. And I realized that my creative process is divided into 3 phases: avoidance, amateur hour, and flow. I would avoid giving them an estimate because I've never been good at that. They wanted to know not only how long would it take me to make it, but how much it would weigh, how much it would cost to produce. And I couldn't figure out any of that. And then amateur hour, unfortunately, lasted me way more than an hour. It lasted me days. And I would have these negative voices in my head saying, you don't belong here. You're an imposter. The last job that you pulled off by the skin of your teeth, that was just a fluke. You're never going to be good at this. You should do something else with your life. And this would go on. I would go into the bathroom to have a panic attack, but there were women in there having full-blown panic attacks. And I'd be like, oh, my goodness, I'm going to get out of here. And I'd go back to my bench. But about 3/4 of the way through the project, it would start to pull together. And it was almost like it's coming out of the fog and starting to come in focus. And I would start, I'd get excited, like, oh, maybe it's going to work. And then I got into the flow state, which is why I think we're all making jewelry, is we're looking for that flow state. And my skills would be matched to the task at hand. I would lose sense of time and space, and, it would come together and it would look pretty good. By the end of the year, amateur hour was only 1/3 of the project, not 3/4 of the project. So it seemed much more manageable. And I had somebody at one of my big Rio demos said to me, when you talk about amateur hour, I call that spending time with my itty bitty shitty committee. And it's like I have all these mean people saying horrible things to me, and I have to just flick them off my
Yep.
shoulder and tell them to go away. And since then, there's a book called Imagine by Jonah Lehrer, and he talks about amateur hour. I forget what he calls it, but he says it's absolutely essential to our creative process. That if we have a problem that we have to solve, a creative problem, it will spur different creativity, new ideas, and more dynamic solutions. So I tell my students in the classroom, my goal is for you to shorten your amateur hour. I don't want you to get rid of it,
No.
but I want you to welcome it and embrace it and find a way to work within it so that you get to the good stuff faster and that you have less time in amateur hour, more time in your flow state. So I was a model maker for a year, and then they offered me a job as production manager. So I was overseeing 27 factories all over the world. I had 9 model makers and designers, specifications writer, and then I became director of the jewelry division. I was the youngest director in the history of the company by 12 years and the only female director under the age of 50. And I was 29 at the time. So I learned a lot. I had planned on being there for a year, long enough to start up my own line of jewelry. But since I was, overseeing all the production and stuff and learning about mass manufacturing, I stayed because it was exciting and compelling.
Okay.
And then I met a guy at the Santa Fe Symposium. I want to do a blog post called Blame It on Rio, because pretty much everything in my life is because of Rio. I went to the Santa Fe Symposium, met a man who got me to Maine. And then because of that, I ended up, with a tool company, which Rio helped me out with that, giving me exposure. So I started out in Maine. I was going to start my own line of jewelry. It was during a recession. And I took this collection of 18 karat gold jewelry with gems and diamonds, and all this store said, I love it. I'd like it on consignment. And I couldn't afford to manufacture all this stuff and put it on memo. And also I realized that if people didn't pay for something, they didn't push it as much when it was in their showcase. So right when I ran out of money, people started calling me up and asking me to carve for them. So I spent the next 16 years carving for Monet, Lenox, Gorham, Keepsake, Art Carve, Givenchy, Bill Blass, Mary McFadden, House of Fabergé, and QVC. That was not fun. And Disney. And the last work I did was a lot of work for Disney. I was carving little tiny dwarves, and friends of mine said, maybe if you whistled while you worked, you wouldn't be so cranky. I tried that. It didn't work. And I'd be like, hi ho, it's off to work I go. I was billing them out $90 an hour. And I hated the work so much. It was microscope work, very tedious, that my studio was never cleaner. And you know that you're not doing the right thing when you'd rather clean the bathroom than sit and carve. So in the meantime, I was teaching people how to carve wax. We would start out making tools out of bike spokes, and everybody would say, you should manufacture these tools. And I would say the same thing, which is, I don't have the money to start up a tool company. So Rio invited me to their Catalog in Motion show in Tucson.
About what year was that? Do you know?
What's that?
About what year was that?
probably 2001, maybe.
Okay.
Or 2002.
And in exchange for when that was.
Yeah. In exchange for a booth in the hallway, we did a big public demo. So I was showing people how to carve with the bike spoke tools, and everybody came up to me and said, I would buy these. You should make these tools. And I said, I don't have the money to start a tool company. And then that night I didn't sleep. I was up all night long thinking, I remembered Annie Lamott said, if you have a problem you can solve by throwing money at it, you don't have a very interesting problem.
Right.
So that kind of hooked me. And I thought, well, maybe I should see what I can do. So I sent out samples to people all over the country, at 9 sets of prototypes I sent, and people would sit on them for months and say, we can't make these at any cost. Right. In the meantime, my buddy Blaine Lewis heard about a guy who had a tool company in North Jersey, Icoe, and we went to see him. And thank goodness I had him sign a letter of non-disclosure saying that the tools are mine. He could manufacture them, but only with my permission. So he had the tools. He had a factory in India, made them. And for years, I wanted wax in gold and silver colors. So I thought, well, I would call up Ferris, who is my favorite wax, and say, do you do special orders, special colors? They said, sure, you need to order 100 pounds of every shape. I'm thinking, there's no way I can do that. So when I knew that the carvers were being made, I mocked up the logo, Wolf Wax by Ferris, and mocked up a box with all marketing blurbs, like now in colors that make sense for jewelers, and sent it to the guy who ran the company. And he called me up immediately. He said, why didn't anybody think of this before? And I'm like, I don't know. And he said, let's do it. He said, we'll make it and ship it, and we'll give you 50 cents a unit. I said, done. And then we launched that at the same time as the carvers and won an Innovators Award from MJSA, Manufacturing Jewelers and Suppliers of America. So that was exciting.
I mean, at the time, it's revolutionary. You're the only one that ever did that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been dental tools or handmade tools.
Yep.
And then you came out with this set, the first one, and it's like all these specialty shapes, and they are wicked sharp.
And the booklet telling you how to use them.
And
Nobody had done that before.
No, I mean, that was revolutionary for
Yep.
sure. Now, on the
So it
wax,
was
I want to touch on the
exciting.
wax real quick.
Yeah.
Was it just the color that you changed or the consistency, the formula?
It was exactly Ferris purple phthalo wax, but
Okay.
gold and silver color. And then we ran into a problem with the silver. We couldn't find a silver dye that wasn't fugitive. And no
Yeah.
matter what we do, it would just turn pink, pale pink. So we discontinued it because we couldn't find the right pigment or dye. It's not a pigment, it's a dye. The right dye that wouldn't change
Right.
color.
I love the gold wax because for me, it's easier to see.
Yeah.
You know, when
And
you're looking
this
at
is
it in
a
the lights
new-
and things, you can see it.
The gold wax is a new formula. We started with Ferris purple formula, but then when people started doing a lot of computer-aided design and machining, I listened to all the problems people were having milling wax, and we came up with the new Wolf milling wax. It's carving and milling wax. So
Okay.
it's harder, but it doesn't clog up.
The tools.
It's more powdery when you cut it, and it's not as brittle. It doesn't crack as easily.
It's
But
still
it's my
wonderful to
favorite
hand
hand
carve.
carving wax.
Yeah, it's still wonderful to hand carve.
Yeah, it's fun.
This episode is sponsored by Wolf Tools and Wax. Now through April 30th, get 20% off select Wolf Tools and Wolf Wax with promo code WOLF20. So you did the wax, you did the tools first and then the wax, and then you're on this whole spiral thing of like just making new tools for the industry.
Yes.
Explain
Yep.
to me, the fundamental thought process of that.
Well, a lot of times, like I would start with my carvers. I sent them my bike spoke, tools, and they reverse engineered them. They looked
Right.
at my shape and they figured out the stamping and everything. Then I had my trimmer and my adjustable trimmer, and I mock up my prototypes. Like I will turn with my new belt sander I'm working on with Fordham.
Yeah.
I turned the wheels on my flex shaft lathe, and I fabricated the body out of brass sheet. I just sent them the funkiest, like crudest prototype, and then we work from there. And
Right.
with their manufacturing capabilities. So with the trimmers, my adjustable trimmer, I made it out of brass and plexiglass, and sent it off to their factory, and then they figured out within their manufacturing capabilities what made sense.
Right.
And so that's how we worked with that. And then there were some products like the first Wolf Ikoe belt sander there's a factory in Taiwan called Phasic, it was their belt sander that they developed, and they showed it to Ikoe, said, let's do this with Kate. So I got it, and I made a lot of changes. There was, I put on a coupler that you could hook up a shop vac. I wanted to put a post so that you could hook it up to a GRS Benchmate.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to add a disc sander onto the drive wheel. So they started out with it, and then I took it and went from there, and we worked together to make it better.
Yeah.
And stuff. So there were some products that Ikoe started that with their manufacturer would say, hey, do you want to sell this? And let's do it through Kate and see what input she has.
Right. Yeah, getting good input from jewelers who are actually using the tools is critical.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this new era of the industry, because when I first started, 25 years ago now, there was pretty much nothing. Manufacturers made stuff and you worked with it. And then in this new generation, jewelers are coming from all aspects and different perspectives. I mean, Pat Pruitt modified your belt sander with some crazy modifications, and it was kind of outrageous. And I love it. I'm loving seeing all this new material coming out and the new ways of doing things.
Rio Grande was the first company that I know of that supported people like me that were jewelers that were making tools for jewelers. And like people like Bonnie Doon and Bill Fretz, and Jane Redmond. There's so many of us that we give
concepts.
Rio so much credit for helping us get ourselves out there. And there's people I don't think realize that the profit margins on tools is not what you would think it is. It's very small. And this is a big volume business. Like you need to have quite a few tools in the pipeline to make a living at this. So
Yeah.
I make most of my living teaching, and the tools just, supplements my income.
Yeah.
Hopefully I have 14 new things I'm working on with Fordham, and I'm super excited about that. And hopefully that'll tip the scale a little bit. So I'll be doing more.
Only 14 though?
Only 14.
Oh,
I
come on.
went
You can do
in
better than
August. I went down and had a meeting with them, and the owner, Rich, was like, I want to do all of them, but let's not try and do them all at
that. All
once.
the same time.
So pick 3 we'll start with. As soon as they start moving along, we'll keep adding the others in. So
Will all these have your name on them?
yes.
Okay, cool.
Wolf Tools by Fordham.
Okay.
So we have I can tell you about a little bit. We have a new 2-inch belt sander coming out that is dynamite. And my marketing campaign is twice as nice, because the old belt sander was 1 inch wide, and this is 2 inches wide, and it has all kinds of bells and whistles. It has an adjustable deck that you can do mitered. If you want to do mitered edges, you could do a 45-degree miter edge. And you can flip it upside down and slack sand in between the rollers when you're doing like the round radius of the outside of a ring. And there's 3 different radius wheels. So if you want to use it like a drum sander, you can, you can do concave surfaces on the rollers. So it's really exciting, and it's super easy to flip around and pivot around and spin it upside down. So it's really exciting.
That's when you buy its own flex shaft to commit to it. So you can just keep it right here next to your side and hit that foot pedal and go to town.
Yes.
Yeah, you need a new flex shaft too.
Yeah. And then we have, we're working on new sandblasters and all kinds of other tools.
Okay, so talk to me a little
exciting.
bit about sandblaster. I've always had trouble with sandblasters because they just get sand everywhere.
That's what this is good at. It has an airtight, it's a solid machine, it's beautifully built, but it has a great gasket and with magnetic on the lid, so that, and then it has a filtration system that we're actually filing a patent on. It's revolutionary, and that way you can reclaim the material and makes it easier to swap media. So, and it works with a foot pedal, so that you don't have to be messing around with a switch. So it's really exciting.
About what's the size, footprint size approximately?
It's about this big. We have 2 of them coming out. One
so kind of
super small for desktop for jewelers that you might have in a jewelry store or in your shop, and then one that's a little bigger that like knife makers or blacksmiths might use, or people who are doing glass that might be sandblasting. But we're the first size. I'm actually going to Fordham tomorrow, and we have our, I think, final prototype for the belt sander and the sandblaster for me to look at with their engineers. And I love working with Fordham. Their engineers are beyond brilliant, and they make a whole lot right here in the U.S., which is really exciting. But they're just wonderful to work with. And when I worked with ICOE, they didn't let me interact with the manufacturers. They always were in the middle. And with Fordham, on Wednesday nights at 9:00, we're talking to the factory in Taiwan. It's 9 a.m. there, and we go over any production issues. So
that's super cool.
It's exciting. And I have some stuff made here. My wax is made in Cleveland. My sanding mandrels are made in Missouri. So not everything is made. I try to make things here as I can.
As much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And those sanding mandrels are incredible. I was talking to my class the other day about them. And
it's like $10 for 3 of them. And it's like they
and they're so much safer.
Yeah. And with the bigger diameter, it's 6 times faster. And you don't get as many ridges on the inside of a ring.
And they don't bend.
No.
And start attacking you.
Yeah.
Right on. So we talked a lot about your products, the new products coming out. Anything else you want to add to that, or?
I kind of don't want to talk about them yet.
Okay.
I don't like the new products. I need to keep it a little secret until we get them out there. I want to be careful what I'm leaking out.
No, that's fine, man. That's fine.
And
the mystery is the fun part.
Yeah. The stuff that's pretty much ready to go, I'm talking about, but the other stuff I want to sort of keep it under wraps. One of the things that is troublesome in our industry is how easy it is to reverse engineer when somebody has something new. I know that there's been trade shows where somebody has an amazing photo booth set up, a little photo box set up that you can take dynamite pictures of your work, and within 3 months, everybody has it. They
Yeah.
took it and reverse engineered it, and they're doing it. So
That's happened to me
we're
too.
trying to be as careful as we can
Yeah.
getting
That's
stuff
happened to
out.
me too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're just contributing at that point. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's nice to partner with a big company that can help keep that at bay.
And
And
keep the
I don't
quality
think
up too.
it keeps the quality up.
Yeah.
Yes. And they can get things through the pipeline with the manufacturing better than just a one person business that's trying to have things made.
Yeah. So are you still teaching or
I
kind
am.
of putting it on the back burner a little bit or?
No, not at all. I have a
Okay.
classroom in Portland. I have benches for 11 students, and signups have been great. I think I have 4 spots left for the year, if that.
So do they go
I'm
to
running
your website to do
classes.
that? Do they go to
Excuse
your
me?
website to do that? Do they
Yeah,
go to your website?
wolftools.com.
Wolftools.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have classes we run from May through October. And because like right now it's snowing, it's April here and it's snowing pretty hard. So I have most of my students fly in from all over the world and all over the country. And so I don't want to try and run classes in the winter when we might have hangups with travel. Plus in the winter, I do more tool development and marketing stuff. It
Right.
seems to be a nice sort of rhythm to have here.
Excellent.
But I've
And
had
then,
students from, I tallied up 16 different countries, which
oh,
is
wow.
amazing.
Well, I know when
Yeah.
you had the classes here at Rio, man, we've had 'em from Africa,
Yes.
all over the world that would come
Yes.
specifically for your class and sometimes taken back to back, you know?
It's very sobering, and I feel like it costs them so much to be with me for the week that I really feel like I have to deliver. But I tell people I'm the codependent workshop hostess. I'm not happy unless everybody in the room is happy. And I pride myself on like tuning into every student. I
Yeah.
had a student by the name of James Sweeney who gave me the best teaching advice I ever had. He said, Kate, you have somebody in the room that would take all the attention if you let them, and you have some shy people in here. So
Yeah.
he used to teach at GIA, and he said, so what I do is I do a demo and I circle the room and talk to
I've seen that.
everybody. And it changed everything for me. So everybody in the room gets one-on-one attention, and I just help everybody till it's time for the next demo and then make the rounds again. And you get good results because you're just looking over their shoulder and helping them. So it's been wonderful.
Are you still making the bubbles and doing the bubbles?
I do.
For people that don't know, when Kay was here at Rio Grande, she would always bring her bubble thing, and our security team and everybody in the cafeteria would come out, and she would do bubbles with everybody. It's fantastic.
I've given away almost 800 sets of bubble wands. It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. It's to make ginormous bubbles. So
Yeah. These are like
yeah.
the two-handed things that you do this with.
it's so much fun. It's hard to be cranky when you're blowing bubbles. I've
I
tried.
know,
It
right?
just
You
doesn't
can't
work.
be mad. God, I still tell stories about how long it would take me to clean up all the wax from the classroom.
Oh, it's
But
a
you guys would
mess.
have lunch, and I'd be in there vacuuming the whole floor.
That's one of the things I'm working on is something to help with that. So that's something.
I'll test it out for you if you want me to test it for you.
Good. That sounds great. It helps remove the dust at the point of where you're making it. So that's one of the projects I'm working on with Fordham. And it's super low tech, but it works great.
It's like a broom.
Nope, it's a little bit
A
higher.
little fancier than
tech
that. It's a fancy broom.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. Gosh, covered everything on my list, Kate.
There we go.
I'm just super excited to talk to you and to learn that you're still teaching.
Oh.
People can go to wolftools.com.
Yes.
And look
I
at your class
figured
schedule.
I'm going to try and do this for another 6 or 7 years. I'm 66 now.
Okay.
I'm thinking I'll teach for 6 more years, but I am going to be teaching less weeks a year. I live about 4 houses from the Nonsuch River, and I have a kayak, and I have a big garden, and lots of company in the summer. So I'm realizing that I might, like every year, take one class off the roster and
There you
like
go.
taper it down that way. But being in the classroom is my favorite thing. Just being there
It's
when
mine
the
too.
light bulb goes off for somebody is the best feeling in the world. And then the follow-up emails that I get with pictures of what they carved and what they've
Yep.
done with it is so rewarding.
Yeah, I hear you, man. That's why I love teaching the little class that I do.
Yeah.
It helps with that amateur hour. You know,
It does.
It's like that problem solving and it's like the stuff that they bring to me is like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
Let's try and figure it out.
Yeah, that's the thing that's exciting is every class somebody has something different they want to achieve.
Yeah.
So I have to like try and figure out how to help them attain their goals. And sometimes what they want to do is like so never going to happen because
Right.
I'm like, well, we'd have to make that out of unobtainium because this is
Right.
impossible.
We have to go find unobtainium.
I think one of the best things about what we do is the problem solving that goes with it. And I always say, walk away if you're stuck and take a break, go for a walk, or the next morning wake up and you'll know what to do next.
Yeah.
And that pretty much always happens. It's like you're letting your subconscious fill in the blanks and help you along when you've just walked away from it for a little while.
And it can be a minute or two.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that long.
Yep.
Yeah.
But or I'll put it down and work on something else. And then while I'm working on something else, I'll have that aha moment.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I know what to do next.
The other half of the brain's working on the other problem.
Yeah. And that's what I do with my tool design. Like with the belt sander, I would start the prototype and then I would hit a wall and then I wake up the next morning like, oh, I know what to try next. Yeah. And implement that. It would get a little further along and then have to back up again. And that's, you don't just, it's like writing a book. You don't just write it and have it right. You do a rough draft and then you keep tweaking the rough draft.
Renditions. Yeah.
Yeah. So I say, blame your tools and figure out a way to make them better. And that's the way to a happy life at the bench. And almost all jewelers I know do that. They're always like putting grooves in their pliers or rounding the edges off their pliers so they don't mar things and just modifying stuff.
Yeah. And that's my favorite part is making tools.
Yes, me too.
And that's why I love the flex shaft. I mean, to me, the flex shaft is one of the most important tools
because
it makes other tools.
Yes.
I
agree.
That's one of the first things I tell my students. I was like, this is probably one of the most dangerous tools and then also one of the best tools.
Yep. I had a flex shaft that I sent to Fordham to fix. And Mike Zag, who's the national sales manager, called me up. He goes, this flex shaft is 36 years old. And I said, can you fix it?
Can you fix it?
And I have to admit, I didn't do a good job of maintaining it over the years.
Yeah.
So he said it was for the classroom. So he found something in the scratch and dent bin and sent it up to me for my classroom. He said, I'm going to keep this and put it in. He has like a little mini museum of the old flex shafts. But it's a solid, that's a machine. It's like I have flex shafts that have been in my studio for 25 years now that work just as good today as they did the day I bought them. You maintain them.
They last forever.
Yeah.
Excellent, man. Well, Kate, that's about all I have. It's really, really wonderful to have you on the show today.
I'm so glad to be here and just to see you. And it brings back so many memories of great times with my Rio buddies. And
well, hopefully next time you're out here, we'll get to have a little lunch or make some bubbles or something.
That sounds great. And thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kate. Me too. And that's it for today's show. Big thanks to Kate Wolf for joining us today and sharing her remarkable journeys. Don't forget to upgrade your bench with Wolf Tools and Wax and use the promo code WOLF20 to save 20% through April 30th. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review and subscribe so you don't miss out on what's coming next on For the Love of Jewelers. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.